But everybody, you see, who is at all sensitive and awake to their own problems and human problems is trying to change himself. We know we can't change the world unless we change ourselves. If we're all individually selfish, we're going to be collectively selfish. If we don't really love people and only pretend to, somehow we've got to find a way to love.
Hello, everybody. I don't know why I'm reading to the wall, but I'm gonna read part 4 today of The Search by Krishnamurti, and it's really long, so it's gonna be like a 20-minute video. Here we go. O world, thou art seeking everywhere for happiness, in every clime, among all peoples, among the animals and among the green trees, beside the dancing waters, upon the stately mountains, amid the cool valleys, and in the sun-parched lands, under the serene starlit skies, in the radiance of the setting sun, in the freshness of the dawn, all beings are searching for this happiness. Through thy sons build impenetrable walls around their country, shutting out the happiness they seek, though thy learned priests fight for the gods they shall worship. Though the contentment of the wealthy be stagnating, though the oppressed and the exploited be suffering, though the man of thought has not found the eternal solution, though the sannyasi who renounces the world has not gained enlightenment, though the beggar that wanders from house to house for kindness has not found shelter, though thy people prefer the darkness of the night to the light of the day, though thy people turn night into day, all are searching for that lasting happiness. As the dreary tree longingly suffers for the spring and green happiness, so all thy people look for that lasting happiness. The lady of fashion who depends on clothes and wealth, the woman who is painted, the girl who flirts, the man who seeks happiness in clothes, the man who drinks incessantly, the man who cannot be happy unless playing at something, the man who kills to enjoy, the priest in his gorgeous robes, the recluse with the loincloth, the actor dressed to please the audience, the artist struggling to create, the poet who pours into words the immensity of his thoughts and dreams, the musician whose soul is thrilled with sound, the saint in his asceticism, the sinner, if there be one, who does not care for God or man, the bourgeoisie who is frightened of all things. All these are searching for happiness. They buy and they sell. They build magnificent palaces, surrounding themselves with all the beauty that money can buy. They plant gardens, the exquisite delight of the refined. They cover themselves with jewels. They quarrel and they are charming. They drink without restraint. They eat without restraint. They are virulent and pacific. They worship and curse. They love and hate. They die and are born again. They are cruel to man and beast. They destroy and create. They produce and annihilate. Yet they are all seeking happiness, happiness in transient things. The rose, beautiful and glorious, dieth tomorrow. In search of happiness, they build vast structures, call them churches, and enter therein, but it eludes them as in the naked streets. They invent a god to satisfy themselves, but they never find in him what they are looking for, what they long for. The incense, the flowers, the candles, the gorgeous robes, the thrilling music are but enticements for that search. The deep note of the distant bell, the monotonous prayer, calling, crying, and begging are but the gropings in the dark for that lasting happiness. In search of happiness they build cool, gigantic temples, the product of many minds, the work of many hands, the chantings, the smoke of the camphor, the beauty of the sacred lotus, do not satisfy their craving. In search of happiness, they bribe, they corrupt, they make unholy the earth, the seas, and mountains. Their graven images do not answer their call, as the mountain stream sweeps all things before it. So is their structure of happiness destroyed in an instant. They destroy each other in their jealous love. In search of happiness, they give labels, pretty-sounding names to each other, and they think they have found the source of eternity, solved the problems of their sorrow. In search of happiness, they marry, rejoicing in their newfound happiness. They are happy as the flower that blossoms with the sun and dies with the sun. They change their love and renew their rejoicings. They are full and bubbling over with ecstasy, and in an instant sorrow is the outcome of their fleeting joy. As the cloud fully laden that empties itself and vanishes from the heavens, leaving again the barren sky, so is their love that is full, that is powerful, and creates and destroys. Their love, so triumphant in the beginning, so strong with desires, so beautiful in the full bloom, so unrestrained in its fulfillment, fades as the leaf to be born again, fading again as the leaf, as the souring tree that has lost its happy leaves, so is the man who sought happiness through love. In solitude, in crowded streets, they search for happiness. All the world moans for happiness, and the winds whisper, the storms threaten, But the man looks for happiness in the passing things, in the transient things, in the things that he can touch and perceive, and groans after the loss of his happiness, as a child that cries after the broken doll. For their happiness fades and withers as the tender leaf. Search their hopes, their longings, their desires, their selfishness, their quarrels and angers, their dignities, their ambitions, their glories, their rewards, their distinctions. There is disillusionment, there is vanity, there is unhappiness. Search their class distinctions, their spiritual distinctions, their limitations, their openness, their prejudices, their embraces. There is an uncertainty of purpose, there is an uncertainty of happiness. Wherever you may look, wherever you may wander, in whatever clime you may abide, there is sorrow, there is pain, unsatisfiable voids, open aching wounds, bared and exposed, or covered over, with the panoply of great rejoicing. No man saith, my happiness is indestructible. There is everywhere decay and death, and the renewal of life. So are they that seek happiness in the passing. Their happiness is of the moment, as of the butterfly that tasteth the honey of every flower, that dieth in the sea, that dieth in the day, as the desert that is deluged with the rain, yet remaineth a weary land without a shadow. So is their happiness, as the sands of the sea are their actions, in search of this happiness, as the aged and mighty tree that towers into the sky, and is felled by the axe in a moment. So is their happiness. They look to their happiness in the transient, in the fleeting, in the objective, and they find it not. Such is their fleeting and unsatisfied happiness. Can you grow the tree of happiness on sand? The happiness that will not fade by usage, that increases by action, that increases by feeling, that is born of truth, that never decays, that knows no beginning, no end, that is free, the happiness that is eternal, they have never tasted. The happiness that knows of no loneliness, of immense certainty, of detachment, of love that is free of persons, that is free from prejudices, that is not bound by tradition, that is not bound by authority, that is not bound by superstitions, that is of no religion, the happiness that is not at the command of another, that is of no priest, that is of no sect, that requires no labels, that is bound by no law, that cannot be shaken by God or man, that is solitary and embraces all, that blows from the snow-clad mountains, that blows from the hot desert, that burns, that heals, that destroys, that creates, that delights in solitude and in numbers, that fills the soul through eternity, that is the God, the wife, the mother, the husband, and the father, and the child, that is of no class, that is of the aristocracy of divinity, that is the refinement of the refined, that is the philosophy unto itself, that is as vast as the seas, that is open as the skies, that is profound as the lake, that is tranquil as the peaceful valley, that is serene as the mountain, that is beyond the shadow of death, that is beyond the limitations of birth, that is as the strength of the hills, that bears the fruit of many generations, that is consummation of all desire, that is the ecstasy of purpose, that is the source of all existence, that is the well whose waters feed the worlds, that is the ecstasy, the joy, that is the dancing star of our being, that giveth divine discontentment, that is born of eternity, that is the destruction of self, that is the pool of wisdom, that creates happiness in others, that has dominion over all things. Such happiness thou hast never tasted, O world. For thou hast been fed on the food of another, thou hast been taught by the lips of another, thou hast been taught to draw thy strength from another, thou hast been taught that thy happiness lies in another, that thy redemption is at the hands of another, that wisdom is in the mouth of another, that truth can only be attained through another. Thou hast been taught to worship the God of another, to adore at the altar of another, to discipline thyself to the authority of another, to shape thyself in the mold of another, to abide in the shadow of another, to grow in the protection of another. Thou hast been taught to lay thy foundations in another, to hear with the ears of another, to feel with the heart of another, to think with the mind of another. Thou hast been fed with the enticements of transient things, thou hast been fed with the food that never satisfies, thou hast been fed with the knowledge that disappears with strife. Thou hast been fed at the hands of the satisfied with the false and the fleeting. Thou hast been nourished by laws, by governments, by philosophies. Thou hast been led, driven, and exposed. Thou hast been sheltered under the shadow that changes from moment to moment. Thou hast been nurtured by false truths and false gods. Thou hast been stimulated by false desires. Thou hast been fed on false ambitions. Thou hast been fed with the fruits of the earth, O world. Thou hast been taught to seek truth in the fleeting. Thou hast been nourished by the transient things. In these thou shalt never find that happiness for which thy soul doth doth seek and suffer. But as the diver plunges deep into the sea for the pearl, risking his life in search of the transient, so must thou plunge deep down within thyself in search of eternity. As the adventurous mountaineer that climbs to conquer, so must thou climb to that intoxicating height, where thou seest all things in their true proportion. As the lotus that pushes heavenward through mire, so must thou push aside all transient things, if thou wouldst deliver that kingdom of happiness. As the majestic tree depends for its strength on its hidden roots, and plays with the great passing winds, so must thou establish thy hidden strength deep within thyself, and play with the passing world. As the swift-running river knows its source, so must thou know thine own being, as the soft blue lake whose depth no man knows. So must thy depth be unfathomable. As the seas contain a multitude of living things, so in thee are their hidden secrets of the world. As on the mountainside, at various altitudes, different flowers grow, so in thee are their degrees of beauty. As the earth is full of hidden treasures which no man hath seen, so in thee are hidden secrets unknown to thyself. As the winds possess immense inexhaustible power, so in thee lieth great unconquerable energy. As the mountain tops dance in the light of the sun, so shalt thou dance in the light of thy knowledge. As there is an ever-changing vision on the winding mountain path, so in thee there is a constant unfoldment. As in the distant star that scintillates of a dark night, so is he that hath discovered himself. I need to stop here because I can't. I continue. In thee alone is the God, for there is no other God. Thou art the God that all religions and nations worship. In thee alone are joy, ecstasy, power, and strength. In thee alone is the power to grow, to change, and alter. In thee alone are the experiences of many ages gathered. In thee alone is the source of all things: love, hate, jealousy, fear, anger, and sweetness. In thee alone lies the power to create or to destroy. In thee alone is the beginning of all thought, feeling, and action. In thee alone lies nobility. In thee alone is no loneliness. Thou art the master of all things. Thou art the source of all things. In thee alone lies the power to do good and to do evil. In thee alone lies the power to create heaven and hell. In thee alone lies the power to control the future and the present. Thou art the master of time. In thee alone is the kingdom of happiness. In thee alone is the eternal truth. In thee alone is the well of inexhaustible love. O world, if thou wouldst know all the hidden secrets, in the treasures of many ages, the experiences of many centuries, the accumulation of power of many generations, the thought of the past, the ecstasies, joys, sorrow, and pain of bygone ages, and the great and foolish actions of the many lives that lie behind thee, the centuries of uncertainty and doubt, if thou wouldst know of the immense future, of the great heights of joyous growth, of the adventure of good and evil, of the result of all thought, of all feelings, and of all actions, of the many past lives and of many future lives, if thou wouldst know of thy hates, of thy jealousies, of thine agonies, of thy pleasures and pains, of thine ecstatic love, of thy joyous rapture, of thy burning devotion, of thy bubbling enthusiasm, of thy joyous seriousness, of thine aching worship, of thine unrestrained adoration, if thou wouldst concern thyself with the lasting, with the eternal, with the indestructible, with divinity, with immortality, with wisdom, which is the pool of heaven, if thou wouldst know of that everlasting kingdom of happiness, if thou wouldst know of that beauty that never fades or decays, if thou wouldst know of that truth that is imperishable and alone, then, O world, look deep within thyself, with eyes clear, if thou wouldst perceive all things. As the tranquil pool that reflects the heavens above, so shall all things find their reflection in thee. As the flower that blossoms forth in the warm sunshine, so must thou unfold if thou wouldst know thyself. As the eagle soars into the heavens, unrestrained and free, so must thou soar if thou wouldst know thyself. As the river that dances down to the sea, so must thou dance if thou wouldst know thyself. As the mountain is strong and full of power, so must thou be if thou wouldst know thyself. As the precious stone sparkles in the sun, so must thou shine if thou wouldst know thyself. As the mother is to the babe, tender with affection, so must thou be if thou wouldst know thyself. As the winds are free and untrammeled, so must thou be if thou wouldst know thyself. If thou wouldst taste of all these things, O world, walk with me in the kingdom of happiness, thou must be free from that poison of truth, prejudice. For thou art immense in thy prejudice, both the ancient and the inexperienced. Thou must be free from that narrowness of tradition, the narrowness of custom, habit, feeling, and thought, the narrowness of religion, worship, and adoration, the narrowness of nation, the narrowness of family and of possession, the narrowness of love, the narrowness of friendship, the narrowness of thy God and of thy form of approach to him, the narrowness of thy conception of beauty, the narrowness of thy work and of thy duty, the narrowness of thine achievements and glories, the narrowness of thy rewards and chastisements, the narrowness of thy desires, ambitions, and purpose, the narrowness of thy longings and satisfactions, the narrowness of thy discontentments and contentments, the narrowness of thy struggles and victories, the narrowness of thine ignorance and knowledge, the narrowness of thy teachings and laws, the narrowness of thine ideas and views. Thou must be free from all these. Prejudice is as a shadow on the face of the mountain, as a dark cloud in the fair skies, as the withered rose that ceases to delight the world, as the blight that destroys the bloom of a ripe fruit, as the bird that has lost the power of its wings, as the man that hath no ears, deaf to sweet music, as the man that hath no eyes, blind to the gorgeous sunset, as the delights of experience to the man that is enfeebled. Prejudice is as the agitated lake that cannot reflect the beauty of the skies, as the barren rock of the mountain, as the weary land of a shadowless country, as the dry bed of the river that knows not the delights of the waters of many summers, as the tree that has lost its green happiness, as the woman that is childless, as the breath of winter that withereth all things, as the shadow of death in a happy land. Prejudice is evil. It is a corrupter of the world. It is a destroyer of the beautiful. It is the root of all sorrow. It has its being in ignorance. It is a state of utter darkness where light cannot find its way. It is an abomination, a sin against truth. If thou wouldst know thyself, thou must cut thyself free from this weed that binds thee, that suffocates thee, that destroys thy vision, that kills thine affection, that prevents thy thought. When thou art free, untrammeled, when thy body is controlled and relaxed, when thine eyes can perceive all things in their pure nakedness, when thy heart is serene and burdened with affection, when thy mind is well poised, then, O world, the gates of that garden, the kingdom of happiness, are open. That is the end of part 4.